Welcome to the Heart of Soul podcast, an exploration of who you are, what you are, and why you are, offering new ways to investigate age-old questions at the heart of you. Hi, it's Joseph, and thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. Today, unality, preduality, and duality from essence to expression, with metaphysics wrapped up in a bow so tight you'll think it's October 1st in Venezuela and Christmas came early. See what I did there? I hope I never forget that joke. We make some deep cuts today at love versus energy, that which is behind all things, and how exactly human existence is an expression of divinity. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks so much for listening, or if you're on YouTube, for watching. Greetings and welcome forward, everybody. This is the penultimate podcast before our election special, which is going to air next time if I have it worked out in my mind with dates and times and stuff. And yes, hello, Stace.
Hello, greetings.
We're going to, as promised, go forward and zoom into, well, actually, from what you said before we hit record, possibly zoom out a bit and go meta to the chart from last time before we zoom in, which I said to Stace, I don't know what he was going to talk about, but I already was aroused by it on some deep soul. Wherever the metaphysics box is in my soul was like, ooh, yeah, I don't know what he's going to talk about. But going meta to something as big as the chart we covered last time, that can't be not amazing. So where should we start?
Well, I think there's only one layer that we could go to that qualifies for meta to that chart. And that's the essence, form, and expression categories that underlie personhood, sagehood, and sainthood. In other words, personhood, sagehood, and sainthood are derivative of the essence, form, and expression of three ways of looking at consciousness, you could say.
So are you saying sainthood, sagehood, and personhood are those three things without giving it away? Is that what you're...
No, those are downline, next level applications of an upstream structural essence, form, and expression.
Okay, so I want to start like saying stuff and making guesses at it. I'm going to shut up and let you explicate it. Otherwise, I'll ruin your presentation of it.
Well, and I just want to spotlight the term that Joseph just used, aroused. He is the only man, the only being I've ever met that has the same reactivity to metaphysics. It's so juicy and exciting for us. That word is not that inapplicable.
Yeah.
It really is. It's consciousness arousal. It's a really rare thing to find in people who have been conditioned out of it, or they just haven't had as many incarnations under the soul belt here to really ripen, to get way behind the curtain on how we where we go from origination to explication in any of our assumptions about the nature of experience.
Just a short story here. The first time I'd studied philosophy in college, but I don't remember much metaphysics there because it was somehow like 90% content and 10% metaphysics, and it was so content heavy. I mean, maybe I just was too immature to get it yet, but it was my junior or senior year, so I would have been 20, 21, and I was on a road trip with a friend, and I was reading this martial arts teacher that I would eventually get to study with named Peter Ralston, and he was writing a transcendental metaphysics. That's what for surely helped. And so I was, because the Descartes metaphysics, it's basically like math and mind, and there's just no soul in it. No soul at all. And I remember reading it, and I was just so excited, and it was a road trip, and I fell asleep, and the sun was on my face, and I just fell into this like deep peace, like I had found something. I didn't even know what I had found, but it was like one of the best naps I can remember, where it was like something in me was like, oh, this is somehow home. Like I have found something here, and I didn't even know what it was. And that was a good, 7, 8 years before I met you, and then that was another like, oh my God, there's more than just transcendental metaphysics, and in fact, those are flawed in some ways. Bring it on! But I'll never forget that little nap I had and the sun coming through the car window. That was when I first met it, or it met me.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It almost really, that's a great way to put it. It has to arrive on in the downshoot of your consciousness, because you literally can't reach for it. It either arrives in some non intention to manifest it way. It just sort of comes. And so I was not able to articulate what I was already perceiving, except going from content. Okay, now that's the limit of that content. Then, okay, it's a little less dense content. Okay, then a little less. And just by going upstream, the next piece arrives, because you're knocking on the door of bandwidths of consciousness that are beyond the brain in some way to get by itself. You can't. It has to be the mental body of the soul that these things come through, and then they secondarily arrive in the brain.
Right, and that's the soul thing, because in the university setting, it's not about consciousness, it's about intelligence.
Yes.
Whereas the martial arts teacher, Peter Ralston, I was talking about, he had some awakening experience. He was coming from, inside of whatever limits, because I know the guy, and he has some serious limits. But he's also fairly awake, and so he was coming from using these words to represent consciousness, not like Renaissance philosophers stringing words together to make sense of things in an intelligence without awareness way. And it was so there's this dance of awareness and intelligence that can happen. That's where metaphysics meet for me.
Nice. Nicely put. So there we just basically parsed the metaphysics of metaphysics.
One of my favorite things to do.
Okay, so we've got these three columns of the dharmas of identity: personhood, sage, and saint. And of course, from that a point of view, if we start with personhood, we're looking at the shallowest, the expression. I'll get to this and defend this in a few moments. Personhood is an expression. Sagehood is a form, exploring form level of consciousness, and sainthood is exploring the essence.
That's what I thought you were going to say. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go backwards then, if that's not confusing enough. We're going to start, because we build toward, we go from expression, then formed, or we go from expression, then widen to form, and then widen to essence. We're going to start with the essence, which is sainthood first, and then we'll go backward to the left across the arch.
This is already a really cool way to answer non-identity sagehood paradigms about whether personhood is illusion or not.
Yeah,
it's exactly. Already like, well, I get what you mean. It's downstream, but that doesn't make it not real.
That's a beautiful way to say it. And this is what we're going to cover here. The first part of today, anyway, is deconstruct basically a core assumption of identity that everything is real, just some things are more real than others. And that alone is revolutionary, where we could say resolutionary in some way.
That's one of those things that, like, if it was the only quote you were known for, it would be plenty, just that one thing. But there's so much more to the paradigm.
So in fact, that's actually what we're going to do here now is deconstruct. Everything is real, but some things are more real than others. So we're going to start with the most real thing. The essence of spiritual nature of our sainthood dharma is to be able to access in a direct way the essence of divine being. That's our goal in sainthood. Not have an idea about it, but have an experience of it that actually confirms whatever we downline then orient to as a quote-unquote belief, right? So in that sense, the essence of the sainthood track that we're looking to one day be able to embody is unality. Okay? The essence of unality moves to the form, to the next level down line of the essence is the form, is preduality, which is sagehood. Unality unfolds to the form of preduality. We'll go a little further into each one here. And then the expression in personhood is the world of duality. So we've got unality as sainthood essence. Its form is preduality, which is our sagehood dharma goal. And duality is the personhood world that we all inhabit as separate beings with separate names and different experiences in a whole dualistic consciousness. Another way to say this in a little more colloquial way is unality is allness. Preduality is no thingness. And the expression of that in personhood is somethingness.
That's cool.
So we've got this. It's another more colloquial way of saying unality, preduality, duality, allness, no thingness, not nothingness. That's the difference here. No thingness, not nothing.
Yeah, what a difference! No thing versus nothing. I mean, that's a hole big enough to drive a paradigm through, as we say.
Oh, Joseph, exactly. Yeah. Because technically, nothing is a something. But a no thing is not the same as nothing. And that difference is what, in my opinion, why it was so easy to slip into the error that self was an illusion. Instead of it being just a little less real downstream of essence. So you've got unality, preduality, duality, backwards from essence to form to expression. Okay? Another way to say it, allness, no-thingness, somethingness. But to drive the whole bus here, we'll go even a little more colloquial. The essence of the sainthood dharma is to give you a taste of the actual divine being, source being, out of which we have unfolded. So the essence would be divine being. The form is soul, as you were referring to earlier, and the expression in personhood is humanness, right? So we go from divine being, then it unfolds into soul, individuated souls, all of our soul species, and that unfolds into the human in this most dense universe domain we call this universe.
Would you accept the word personality for humanness, or is that too specific? Why humanness? What?
I only say humanness because that includes both the protective self and the soul I.
Okay.
They are made human together.
Yeah.
So I thought back and forth about how to speak to that, but you could say that's a more downline expression of humanness is the soul I, or is the protector I. But they're both human, so I kind of left it at that.
Sure. Yeah. Humanness is sort of like a big retail.
That's right. That's right. And last but not least, now we'll go a little more applicable to a really big paradigmatic hole that gets driven through. And that is that the essence of everything is ikoria. Ikoria is that which source being is actually comprised of. Ichor, at the root of it is ichor, which used to mean the blood of the gods, and I've sort of adapted that. It was a good word. But we have yin divinity ruling now, so ikoria unified a little bit here in the last 10 years. But ikoria, the essence, the blood of the gods, the blood of source being or divine being, the form that we experience as that is love. That's the form ikoria takes, from essence to form. And when love comes to this level of personal being, it shows up as energy. And so this is why it's so important, where people say, what's the difference? People think love is a kind of energy. And we would say, and this is so seminal, that energy is a form of love. If energy was the source, then there would be no love essence to divinity's core being, right? And all we're doing here is metaphysicalizing what the great teachers have all told us, that divine being is love. It's just love in the end. You can't know what it is. You have to experience some downline version of it that our soul consciousness or our human consciousness can actually encounter and not just believe in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Ikoria is the blood of the gods, basically. It is the stuff of which it is made. That's the best we can say it as children. I can't get any clearer than that with word abstraction. But love is actually how we first experience the presence of Ikoria. It's just love. It's the only word. Love is not a thought. Love is not can't be categorized. You can't ever prove love. Well, prove you love your beloved. How do you prove that? All you can do is say, well, you got to feel it, okay, and then you can just deconstruct from there. You can't know it except as an experience, and that's why it's not really abstractable. Love can't be defined. Well, we take a stab at it. We take a stab at defining love.
So you can't, love is the most upstream we can experience it. We don't experience Ikoria in any other way other than love. And there's lots of different frequencies and ways and all that, but that's as close as we can get to the experience of it.
I thought so for a long time. But I can say at about, I rate myself about a 72% able to embody the state stage of identity. That's what we used to call enheartment, where you attain and integrate all three of these dharmas in one lifetime.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I'm experiencing something behind me on my back it's something more basic than love. And all I can guess that I'm getting just a taste of just a really slight taste of what Ikoria is, the source of love. And I can't put any other words to it except it's not deep enough. I'm not sure I'll ever feel more than that this lifetime. But I think it may be possible to someone in maybe 2 or 3 generations.
I think if I know, in quotes, what you're talking about, I think I've maybe had some moments like that where it's sort of like I get the image of each of the 3 hoods is like a lens, and they have to align just right. You
Right,
definitely,
exactly.
as an soul eye, have to be there, because if you don't, you can't have an experience.
Right.
You also have to be able to see that which is behind all things, that is no thingness. That's sort of the canvas that the experience is on.
Exactly.
And then when those line up, there's something divine that is also behind all things, but it's not the notness.
Yes.
It has something to it. It has substance, but not form.
Oh, nicely said. So I think you have. It's just we haven't had a categorical space to describe the experience.
Yeah.
I love that all 3 lenses lining up.
Like when you're at the eye doctor and they put all these lenses in front of you, it has to be just right.
So let's look at it from the other side. It helps a little helpful to go there too. Is we can directly experience energy. It's moving, electrical energy. You can get short circuited. You can have a little buzz. You can get shocked if you put your fingernail in a plug. That's the most direct experience of energy. Love is harder to. It's still an experience. It's an experience of something that energy is made of, and so when you feel love, the real root love is the form of love that is the form of Ikoria, of the divine substance. It's a little harder to describe. You can describe and weigh and measure energy, but you can't describe and weigh love. So it's one level more essential toward essence.
Not capturable by the net of the mind. Mm-hmm.
Exactly, not at all. But energy can be by the human mind, as well as the mental body of the soul. But
And that's so
Ikoria,
interesting right there, because it's like there's so much driven by what we can measure because science is such a dominant paradigm. But when you ask people what's most important to them, love's always in there, despite the
yes,
fact that it's not measurable. It's, they make all sorts
right,
of huge decisions around it. And, that's an apparent contradiction without metaphysics like this. Well, what do you mean? That love that we can't measure, that you're basing your life around all these other things, the number of dollars in your bank account, and
right,
the
right,
number of tumor cells that are not in your body, and all of these kinds of things. But love, this amorphous thing that you can only feel and can't measure and you can't put in a box and all that, that's somehow more
exactly.
important, but we don't really live like that in other ways at the same time. It's confusing.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Joseph. We can live as if that is true by aligning with it sort of energetically. But to embody it, so I thought I was done. I thought there would be a missing essence to love, even though there was essence, form, expression everywhere else. Early on, it hadn't unfolded. I went from energy to love. That was fairly easy for me to unfold into. But now, after 40 years of this stuff, there's something awakening one step more essential than my experience of love. It's almost like it's so, how can I say love is still. It vibrates so fast it's still. It doesn't move. It's like it vibrates in place. That's how I experience what we call love. So that alone is pretty definitive. It puts a little more salt on the tail of the bird's
It gives it
tail,
some
right?
physics anyway.
It gives it some physics. Yeah, it vibrates so fast it's still. But this Ikoria, it's almost like a guild or a patina. That's all I can describe it as. A patina, it's so thin, but it has some, it doesn't have substance, but it has presence.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best I can describe it. There's a presence just upstream of how I experience a still-based vibrating love. And that's Ikoria, I think. If that's true, I may have stumbled on finally an essential form of energy, what divine being is made of. We should be able to experience it when in the in-between life, when we're just soul I. We lean right back into the net web of Ikoria. It's completely discernible
It's funny
in
you should
between
say
lifetimes.
the net web, because I've had some experiences that are maybe in the neighborhood of this, and I experience an aspect of the divine that's two-dimensional.
Yes. Yes.
Infinitely two-dimensional, which there are
Yes.
theories that black holes are actually
Yes.
two-dimensional.
Yes. There are. I recently read about that. Isn't that
Yeah,
interesting?
and it makes me think like there's something very elusive, because we project our three-dimensionality
Yes.
onto our experience, and there's something elusive about getting with experiencing something that's infinitely two-dimensional that just doesn't compute, because
Yeah.
we're not, but our
Yeah.
essence somehow is.
I completely agree. It completely, that what you're saying there with words dovetails to what I'm trying to say here too. Because if it's directly experience, if Ikoria is directly experienceable in between fleshy incarnations, then the deeper the soul I inhabits the personality, the human, the more we should have at least some sort of taste of it. Because there's no seam between Ikoria and the dense edges of this dualistic universe. There's no seams. The seams are all consciousness barrier driven. We haven't unfolded or evolved to a place where we can actually experience that unless we heal all this unconscious stuff that's in our protector, right? So if it's directly experienceable, you lean right back into it like a rubber mat, two-dimensional. We are inside it at the same time it is inside us. It is inside us at the same time it's outside us, which is again doesn't work with our dualistic brain.
I've heard Adyashanti refer to. He doesn't use the word non-dual that much. I've heard him refer to it as the ground of being.
Ground of being.
And as we've talked about before, he's not a pure Zen teacher. Although,
Right.
I don't know if he would. I don't know if he knows that.
Yeah. Bless his heart, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think he's got that
does.
super
Yeah.
innocent,
Right.
guileless thing going on, which he would admit. And there's certain levels of
Yeah.
metaphysics he does go into, and certain ones he just doesn't. But I've heard him talk about the ground of being as a feeling of infinite potentiality. And that's a really interesting
Yes.
thing here
Yes.
because the pre-dual is potentiality, but when I feel into the feeling of infinite potentiality, that has a presence to it. So it's like the notness canvas is what duality gets painted on, but
Yes.
what is it that provides in a loving way that
Yes.
space? That's what's
Exactly.
behind the canvas.
That's exactly right. It's the space that the canvas exists within or
Yeah.
floats within.
And it
that's
has a feeling to it. It's like here is
Yeah.
a canvas for you to paint on. It's not just canvas sitting there like with nothing.
Right.
It's
Right.
perceivably not empty. It's like
Yes.
yeah. And that's why Ajahn has so much heart in it, because he's not a pure Zen teacher.
Exactly. Oh, it's so well said. And that's why it was so shocking to me when I had those 6 or 8 weeks of pure pre-duality. I want to come back to that in a moment. I was so shocked when Divine Being's presence came forward again, because that nullified the basic assumption of esoteric Buddhism,
Yeah.
that there's something behind the nothing, right? But their metaphysics say nothing something could be beyond nothing. But they're stuck with nothing. Although even there are some teachers that make the distinction with no thing, but still would not be able to shoehorn something meta to pre-dual.
They'd only in passing mention it, like what's the something light of being, the transcendental light of being? What's that phrase?
Radiant transcendental being.
Yeah, is that? Adi Da? Who said that?
That's Adi Da.
Yeah.
That radiance is exactly what we're talking about with Ikoria. It's radiant, and it actually has a temperature too. It's warmer than the warmth of love, but it's not hot. And so it's the radiant transcendental being that he was talking about. That remember, he's a Advaita Vedanta lineage, not a pure Zen. So there is room in the impersonal beingness of the radiant transcendental being that has some presence. They just don't put any words to it except refer to it as the end all and be all of everything. We put a little different lens on it and say that the pre-dual is an aspect of the unality. Pre-duality is, and that's why it's so important to move from trans-duality in all the esoteric East mostly, to pre-duality, because what is up, pre-duality means it's upstream to duality. And what's upstream to duality? What allows the space for the blank canvas to exist in? And that's unality, and that's the level of Divine Being's self-consciousness. Remember, there's no way that we could be self-conscious if Divine Being wasn't self-conscious. It's impossible. Everything is self-conscious, down to weeds and bugs. It's just that they're not aware of how conscious they are. We call it instinct in our scientific stuff from animals, but we're aware that we're self-aware, and so is Divine Being. And we're just not even 1/1,000,000th of the depth of the self-awareness of self-awareness. But our experience of it is radiant. It is radiance, and that's what Ikoria feels like. It tickles on my back like gold flakes.
Wait, I have a question that may be nonsense, but if animals are aware, and we're aware that we're aware,
right?
Is Divine Being using us to get to aware that it's aware that it's aware?
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's not crazy. This is what that's another beautiful way of saying, Joseph, that divine being needs us at the end of its octopus arms of soul species to give it information back to itself. We've been teaching that for 30 years.
I just never thought that of one more meta of awareness.
Yeah, exactly. It needs us to provide it a space to get itself. If you take the whole of let's just even our universe, just the most dense universe, the totality of that, divine being would go, when that unfolded out of it, that's me. And then planets and gases heated together and became nebulae clouds, and out of those precipitated the matter. It was discovering itself as it unfolded. And so once the physical universe was unfolded, then inside that physical universe, divine being found a way to inculcate certain species with its awareness of self-awareness. But it's got awareness of it. It needs us as aware we're self-aware to give it the awareness of its awareness of itself. It's you get dizzy. That's the most we can say about it.
I'm experiencing somehow like somewhere between my third eye and my heart, both a holiness and a horror at the same time of how outside, in quotes, of God humans have to be, such that we do these crazy things that are very not divine in many ways. Yes. So that divinity gets to know itself. It's like there's something both holy and horrible about it at the same time. Ugh.
Oh, I love it. And another way to not sanitize but positivize what you just said is
I'll take positivization.
Just add a W in front of holiness. Holiness, holiness, including the dark shit. In other words, there's no devil, there's no hell. What the way we said this before, but here's a good context for it that we're talking about right now. What divine source being unfolds itself into next is an unknown, and it's that unknown that creates contraction, a contractibility, space for contraction, and it's that contracted space that creates fear and creates all of our human kvatch, all of our bullshit.
Holiness with an H and horror is too oppositeified.
Yeah,
holiness with a W is just like, all of that. That's
all of it.
God.
So when a religionist might ask, I don't know if religionists would never ask me this, but if a religionist ever asks, well,
religionists don't ask you anything.
What's the source of evil if there's no Satan? Well, divine being is the source of evil. How is that possible?
Right.
Well, it has to be, because that's where the buck stops. You can't. I mean, the story that especially Christianity and Judaism and partially Islam takes is that a divine being is unhappy with evil.
Right.
It's not.
Which is the birth of a lot of really flawed metaphysics and Christianity.
It doesn't like what our evil actions and intentions and motives do, but it can't deny its authorship. You see, there's no seam. There'd have to be a seam between divine being's consciousness and ours for there to be a substantive enough other input. Well, wait, the input would have to come outside of God, into God. But there is no outside to God.
Yeah.
And that's not rocket science, really. What's always astounded me is how that simple construction, that there's nothing outside of God, everything is inside of God, so it can't get outside of itself to get information about itself. So voila, what it unfolds into is the only mirror for it, and it never ends unfolding. What we call evolution is just its unfoldment, positive or negative, as it becomes aware of itself. And we are really helping it. We're like in Einstein's metaphor, we're the bowling ball in the tarp that bends space-time But you just transfer that to consciousness. Awareness of self-awareness is the bowling ball that shapes our experience. It shapes the very fabric of our experience of ourselves and the experience of everything.
You think about how much more information we've provided about the nature of reality than like squirrels. Where like you could learn everything you need to know about a squirrel watching it for like a day or two, but humans,
Right.
there's always more stuff we're up to.
Yeah, and one of the best metaphors I have for this problematic challenge is just because a cat can never know about the internet doesn't mean the internet doesn't exist. See, and I love that. Just because we're unaware of these way more metaphysically upstream natures of consciousness doesn't mean they don't exist. But unless they can be measured and quantified and qualified in metaphysics anyway, the bad metaphysics at least quantify and qualify.
Yeah.
But they're going to be way downstream warped because they don't get the seamlessness that nothing is outside of God. God would not go to war with, in any versus way with one of its children. The devil, it's going to be a fight for good and evil. It wouldn't enter. It's ridiculous. It just shakes its mighty head that it doesn't have.
I don't know how you would do that. Like the fish goes to war with the ocean. How does that work?
Yeah, exactly. The fish is so powerful, it has the power to stop the ocean. What? Wait. Fear, all darkness is based in fear, but fear is not the opposite of love just because it impedes love. A dam is not the opposite of the water it holds back. It just impedes its flow. So when you say fear is the opposite to love, no. That's a high school level a metaphysical assumption that fear is, if that. So fear is not the opposite of love, listeners. We offer as a truth for you to self-validate that just because it impedes love doesn't mean it's the opposite of love. And that's how dualistically confused our brain eye is different than our soul eye. But since we have a dharma to soulify your soul eye and start replacing the protector eye, the more ensouled we become, the more godliness we draw into our direct experience from behind. So these things, the essence, form, and expression of unality, preduality, duality, and saint, sage, we go the other way, duality, personhood, pre-duality, sage, essence, unality, going back upstream. That's what these three columns are based on. Personhood is the local expression of the form of the Eastern non-dual, pre-dual teachings, and the essence of the pre-dual West Eastern teachings is unality or allness. So even what's his name? Not Maharishi Yogi. The other
Ramana
really
Maharshi.
famous Ramana Maharshi. He would use the term Mahatma or greater being just as much as he would use non-duality or whatever he called non-duality.
Oh, I didn't know that. Ramana used that kind of stuff? Okay.
It slipped into that without him having any metaphysics about it. He would refer to this.
You can see it in his eyes. There was so much light in his eyes. It wasn't the dead Zen emptiness thing he had going. Right. It became very luminescent.
Right. And it's sort of like when Trump does his weaving. He calls it weaving. All right. Let's positify that. He's.
I've been wanting to make a weaving joke for weeks. You beat me to it.
Well, Ramana isn't even aware that, and I think that this comes out of his mouth, that the inference of a divinity different than non-duality. And so, but he's at Advaita Vedanta track instead of Zen. So, but they still they might acknowledge what Adida called the radiant transcendental being, which is why they call him a real avatar, because he actually nounized the impersonal being to another level.
I forget how much of the transcendental metaphysics brought into the West were Advaita Vedanta. I forget that. It's really like that's most of it. I mean, there was Alan Watts
Yeah.
was a fan of Suzuki, and he was a straight Zen
Yes.
teacher, right? But
He was straight. Yeah.
yeah,
but
but Ramana Maharshi and the Maharishi, the TM guy, all that's Advaita
Right.
Vedanta, Gangaji. So
Right.
people think that's Zen, but it's really not.
It isn't. But interestingly enough, Gangaji, of course, doesn't believe in soul. The radiant transcendental being for her, who is Advaita Vedanta, you're right, Papaji, that's all radiant, or that's all Advaita
Advaita.
Vedanta. Advaita. She still insists that when the brain dies, self-awareness dies. And so, and I think she uses that as a shorthand for the drop returns to the ocean.
Yeah, right.
Because there is no separateness once you enlighten all the way. It disappears. So I think I'm just spiffing there. I've not talked to her personally about it, but that's what I think she means why she's a rabid atheist. Because if you enlighten while you're in flesh with a mental body, you transcend the mental body, you are mirroring the actual state that happens when the brain dies.
Yeah, but then there should be no individual preferences whatsoever, right? There should be the individuated self ought to disappear, and there's observably a lot of individual in her and many other people like her. So
well, yeah. Oh, I love that. Thanks for bringing that in. The key word there is attachment.
Right. Yes.
Right? She is really attached to her fucking opinions. She is really attached, so much so that she shames people for if they disagree with her. So how she can look in the mirror and not get that she's not attached. She's not unattached, which means she's not as enlightened as she thinks she is, or else there'd be a generosity of spirit and not a punitivity that she shames people with for being stupid relative to her attainment, right? So maybe she's an 8.
She could be. I once saw her in Lithia Park in Ashland, and I just sort of waved at her, like, hey, I recognize you. And, so she smiled and waved back, and it was like, oh, yeah, there's a person there. I could see she felt a little shy, but also kind of like, cool, this person recognizes me. I like that. There was all sorts of personal reaction there, so I don't get that.
And that doesn't register. That should register in a meta way to such an attained a being, right?
Yeah.
And so we're talking really neo-transcendental metaphysics here. That's a good way. We made a joke about that once, that we're meta to standard transcendental metaphysics of the East, Advaita and Zen. So we call it neo-transcendental metaphysics. So what we're trying to do is put the final mosaic puzzle into place to honor the West's picture that there is a self-aware God, just not the one they teach, who's upset with us for having faults and demands obedience and wants glory.
Yeah.
As if divine being is insecure. Only insecure people want glory.
Well, that's the equivalent, like in the devotional side, it's like God needs to be glorified, and on the sagehood side, the you need to not exist. It's like sort of the equal and opposite. There's something wrong with you, and here are the two possible ways. You think you exist too much, or you're not serving God enough.
Nicely put.
One or the other.
Nice. Exactly. So that's why we started off the podcast today. Before we go zooming in a little more, I realized yesterday that there was a zoom out that we didn't cover, which ideally would have been covered before we got to this chart. But we asked backward into it, and that's fine. We can go into it first. That's fine.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yes. So what's important here, the reason that is important is that think of if you got the chart, if you're seeing this on YouTube, if you got the chart on there, think of that as behind this canvas. It's the easel that's holding up, or that this canvas is readable and perceivable, is this essence, form, and expression. Sainthood, will eventually, in some lifetime, deliver us to the essence of divine being. Sagehood will be the form the divine being takes because the womb of yin divinity is empty enough to be capacitous, divine capacity, like Ajya. That is exactly what it is. And that vibes, even though Advaita Vedanta would not say that it vibes with Advaita Vedanta's softer demarcation between duality and non-duality, right? Because it allows personhood to be real, even though it's the expression. The form of it of sagehood is a little less downstream, and the most upstream is, of course, divine source or source being. So we've got everything covered here. In sainthood, we can have room for younger souls to have their experience of a divine self-aware being. It was just pre-psychological and pre-philosophical, and it was based on, well, things like burning bushes, which were actually something like cannabis that Moses actually smoked, or they burnt those and to create higher states of consciousness to get God on Mount Sinai. So he was on a trip from that burning bush, and when he got the Ten Commandments, well, Ten Commandments was perfect for that evolutionary step for us. It got us started at, wait, there are discernible positives and discernible negatives that aren't just, that have some essential nature behind it.
Yeah.
So
objective morality.
Objective morality, right? We go way deeper, of course, but it was available at the time, and Moses was really pissed at the Hebrews because they were starting to get involved in Baal and some other things because they were so long wandering in the bloody desert. They lost their way from Moses' point of view. So he objectified divine being's voice via these lightning bolts into stone. Well, he was high from the burning bush, and that doesn't dishonor it.
Yeah.
He actually accessed at that time the only thing that was possible to objectify morality. So we can even find meaningfulness and honor in these very juvenile, young soul consciousness forms and expressions because they're all in tune. It doesn't fight with what we're saying. It's just an earlier version of it. So that's why we criticize only other paradigms when they think their metaphysics is the end all be all. Well, we can't claim that in identity. It just keeps unfolding. Who knows what we're going to know 10 years from now, right? There may be 3 other angel soul species, for example, that have been not coming here at all, so we would never have encountered them. We don't know. I don't think so, but who am I to know? What the hell?
Yeah, there's no part of identity that ever says, and this will be the case forever. It is inarguable. There's nothing else. Nothing has that asterisk on it.
No, and that really upsets a lot of people. It wants, a lot of people's consciousness want definitive endings.
I know the feelings.
Yeah, come on.
I just don't think that's me. That's all.
That's good. But see, that's the secret, Joseph. You already can feel that that's not you. That would be a protector preference. But that's the most common thing over the years. We can close this chapter of it here. This part is people, when it really comes down to it, they insist that this is the last fucking incarnation they are ever going to do. I'm done. I've done it.
Hinduism called. They want their facet of paradigm back. You want to be done. You want to be done. I'm done. Well, actually, there's a half-truth to it. You can choose never to incarnate here again, but the price you'll pay, this is not something we've talked a lot about, if you've had most of the time more than 12 or 13 incarnations here, you're here for the long haul. You get like a trial period at first.
But once you're in, you can never choose to come here again. But if the wounds you engender here have to be healed here. You can't heal them in higher states of consciousness.
Of course. Right.
I mean, and this is not a new idea. It just was never applied to incarnational truth by New Age or Now
Right. If you
Age.
come here and acquire the disease, you got to hang out long enough to acquire the cure. Mm-hmm.
And yet, most of the New Age, Now Age stuff is no, just raise your vibrations.
Energy.
And it's the same thing with people who mistakenly think that as soon as you die, you get all eternal truths revealed to you. This is just nonsense.
Yeah, then why you wouldn't have to come back then, right?
Right. If that were the case, I heard someone say once, well, you have to embody that, so you got to keep coming back. But you get all answers to everything, and that's just not true.
So you as a soul have absolute truth, and then you come here and forget most of it. Mm-hmm.
Right.
That makes sense.
No.
Then you're a god when you die.
Right.
Yeah.
There are paradigms that call us little gods,
Right.
And that's not untrue in one way. But if you've been more than let's be generous today. I feel generous. My birthday's coming up. If you've had double 12, if you have 24 incarnations here, you're stuck. You've engendered enough wounds here that you're going to have to keep coming here. But we've never had a method until now. We humbly offer to be verified by you. We have a way to actually do that finally. And that's what we want to deconstruct a little bit more
and
with the chart.
It's not that other paradigms have not done anything in the domain
of course
healing soul fears. They've done things. It's just that we offer that Identity offers the most complete picture of all the models that promises an efficient way of moving through it that's way less haphazard and problematic than the other ways.
At least up until now. Joseph and I always have talked about over the years, and Eric too, the three of us, sort of the longest metaphysicians. Eric's got a hankering for metaphysics. And as a Michaelite, that's pretty cool.
Very cool.
But we've always said that we've always been with the never-ending story, so to speak.
The film Never-Ending Story? Yeah.
Just another. I love that. The Nothing. Remember, they were fleeing.
Oh yeah,
Nothing?
I used to have nightmares about that thing. I saw that
me
movie
too.
when I was, what was that, like 1980 or something? I was like 6 or 7 years old when I saw it.
And it was eating up all the somethingness, right?
Yep.
And that was repeated in Keanu Reeves' movie about when he came down. The remake of that 1950s film where everything was turning into the granulation. Everything was granulating. Everything was disappearing. I'll get the name of it later. It's The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, right.
He made a remake of it. He was the alien. And in the end, that movie, their form of the nothing that was destroying something was granulation. It was just eating everything until nothing was left.
I don't think I did.
Oh, it's worth it. It's worth it. Keanu is perfect for that. A Syrian playing an alien. Oh man, is that perfect or what? Right. Anyway, so that's the thing that's behind the three dharmas is essence, form, and expression. The expression is personhood, the form is sagehood, and the essence. We go backwards. We have to start with content, then go to ultimate context of the end of content, and then find that there's an additional content, but it's unality, it's unalistic, not dualistic, which boggles the mind. You just got to kind of feel that too. So in that sense, we needed to, in my opinion, to honor where we talked about the three soul fears, and that explains those dharmas. But upstream of the three soul fears is actually this cascade of essence, form, and expression, and personhood is the expression. So of the terror of being.
Do you think the non-linearity of this yin phase of consciousness means that the identity work for people will be less linear and the three hoods will be more somehow combined or less segmented?
I think we're already feeling that.
That's what it seems.
There's a reasonable linearity that you can't attach to. To start with expression, move to form, to be able to get to essence, like you referred to that earlier. Mm-hmm. There is that meta-linearity, but how we go about that now, I think the more yin divine being, yin divinity saturates us, the more integrated these three dharmas will be, such they'll be interpenetrating. And we might start with, as we would start with anyone, the personhood track, but we are already open to past life attainments coming forward, even coloring the protector.
Yeah.
So,
which they do.
The answer, which they do, they'll mirror it, but we can't process a lot of those information bandwidths so deeply until we can get the protector unfused from the soul eye.
Sure.
But they can be incorporated as resonant clues, right? If a person comes in and their protector takes them out by making them feel they can't take anything in, and they're noticing that, they bring that to their personhood work. Well, what's going on here? Do you have a non-dual enlightenment that's somehow incapacitating your gold to come through, your soul eye to come through? So yes, the answer is yes. I think it'll become more and more enspiraled, more and more interpenetrative. But we've got signposts. We've got something substantive that can identify whatever's happening as some combination of personhood, sage, and saint.
Yeah.
And that's got a ton of information in it, even if it's mixed. There's data in that. When we do soul species, which is a sainthood thing, we're integrating
right.
how the enneagram, your enneagram point, shapes the way you experience, and how even in the spacer, our spacer stuff shapes experience. So it's already interpenetrative, but wow, now that in Divinity, which wraps everything in it's collectivizing in a healthy way, collectivizing the collective consciousness. That's exactly what will happen. We'll get more information per unit work in identity.
That's what seems to be happening. It seems to be quickening in a way, and that would also answer the question: how is identity going to serve more people? Because there seems to be more interest coming, and part of that answer is going to be, well, even with the high bar of a facilitator having to be facile in all three hoods,
right?
They're going to have to get there quick to be able to turn around and serve more people, because I hardly have any room at all myself. Yeah,
it's same. I could do a little more in personhood, for example, but I'm not. I know my limits in it, and I acknowledge that. I can do it up to a certain point. So that's an open question: how we're going to serve the greater interest, and it's a vital question. But the answer to it is not attainable at this moment.
Yes, like so many things, and
we just
and that's in the box of. There's this box in me of like waiting for answers to these fucking questions. This is like what's written on the box, and it's like just sits there collecting dust, being like, yeah, how does it feel to not have answers to these questions? Is the only thing I can do with it.
Beautifully said, and that's a good way to bracket it. I think is that those that say we got to do something now to make this happen. No, you've got to get, and this is where some protectors really can't bear ambiguity. They got to have an answer. They got to do it now. Divine Being is not supporting that right now. It's telling all of us in this limbo kind of thing where the fabric of time, perception of time is even affected. That we've just got to roll with the ambiguity. And that brings up a ton already exposing of protector mechanisms that can't bear that. It's got to know, it's got to be prepared. We got to be prepared for the future. You prepare for the future.
Softer versions like, I should have a plan, or this is what my life should look like when I'm 50 years old, or, and it's like, the answer is like, no, and no. And for me, it's I'm getting really well acquainted with this existential wrongness, because when all of the projections from my protector of how things should be, like literally all of them, I mean, I don't know about all of them, but most of them, the feedback is like, oh, you think you know how reality should be, and that's not actually how it is. it brings up my own sense of existential wrongness, because if I can existentially control a certain amount of things and get things to go a certain way, even the next 3 hours or this weekend or whatever, or keep the grass cut a certain height, whatever it is, somehow then I'm existentially right or okay or in control. Shaped.
At least stable. At least
stable.
Shaped and stable. Yeah, exactly.
And so no is the answer to that. No. You don't get to have that shape.
And that ambiguity, we've noticed, take a couple of different forms that we're just starting to be able to map. And that is, it's like juggling 5 dishes at the same time and insisting that they're definable to complete. In other words, you're juggling and nothing goes to completion. And that's the thing that drives people crazy. Wait, I've got these 5 things. Bree and I have a certain 3 or 4 things right now that just refuse in our everyday life to complete. Mm-hmm. And all it does is push us right back into the cloud of ambiguity trust. Because you can't swim against this current, folks. You can try, but every time you try to over-define or feel stable or feel like you have some efficacy of self-defining yourself, you're going to get pushed against a rock or a dam there, and you just got to melt with the rock.
Yeah. It reminds me, I was doing some sanding and finishing of wood recently, and I'm experimenting with some stuff, because if I can pull off anything in the physical world like that, it's magic for me. So I like to do that. The metaphysical world is way easier. The physical world, not so much. And it's like the layers of how many grits of sandpaper and how many coats of varnish go on, and it's sort of like whatever you do, there's another one. And the sense of like, well, when is this going to be done? It's like, when's what going to be done? Well, I want to be finished with this, but this is your life. This is like your evolution of the soul. Yeah, but how many more coats? How fine a grit do I have to do? And it's like, what do you mean? It's a circle. Like, what? Yeah.
It's maddening to our mental bodies and maddening to our willful bodies, both. Yeah. And man, that's how we track it, is both our mind goes, that's not logical and it's not what it should be. That's the mental version. And then the will kicks in to fix it. And then the will will make you aggravated or short or projecting darkness when it's just human stupidity or bureaucracy.
I'm so good at attracting the worst customer service on the planet. I'm like 9 out of 10. And every time, like, something goes horribly wrong, and I'll be saying to the agent, like, you realize you haven't apologized yet. Like, this was really your mistake, and you haven't even apologized yet. And then they will continue to not apologize. And I'm like, wow, this must be me. Erica is always pointing out to me how good I am at attracting terrible customer service, because it elicits out of me that willful should, like, this shouldn't be happening. Yeah. I shouldn't be treated like this. And then it's like, yeah, look what that's going to get you. That will get you absolutely nowhere. And you're just going to have to digest it all.
It's a really angst-laden, beautiful way to explain it.
Oh, it's brutal sometimes.
It really is. Our identities are based on successful completions, whatever that is in your world, right? And when that is disallowed, and on top of it, what if you're penalized innocently by some bureaucracy? The shoulds just never stop coming, and you can really work yourself up into a lather about it. And that's not unreasonable, but it's not evolutionary.
And this, what we're talking about, this sort of enforced nonlinearity or circularity, it makes me realize, like, for the last couple of weeks, when I wake up and go to sleep, it has a little bit of, not a little, it has a lot of the feeling of the Bill Murray Groundhog Day movie.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
It has this, like, here I go again, I'm going to sleep. I just did this. And here I go again, waking up. Like, this day doesn't feel any different than yesterday. I'm going to push the rock up the hill, and then it's going to roll down. I'm just going to do this again. Like, where is this going? and
Yeah.
and it's grinding down the me that needs an answer to that. Is
Yeah.
the loss of that me is, I think, the answer. I think that's what you're pointing
Yes.
to. That's the
Exactly
answer.
right.
When you'll stop asking, then it will be
Right.
done. Maybe.
It's and it's just, yeah, maybe that. I love that. That's more ambiguity,
Yeah,
right?
because it's not. There's no guarantee. Because if it were, then the
No.
green would go. Okay, I surrender. Can things be better now?
Yeah.
But no, there's no
Yeah.
guarantee at all.
No. And that's what's the hardest here to roll with. Literally, you're a rolling stone that gathers moss that you can't get unstuck from you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all a meta way of saying, if we go headline to everything we're saying here that's so difficult these days and challenging, we're being invited to stop fighting the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're inviting to, really, it comes down to one simple construction that's beyond how complicated it is. Where you don't go through life, where you let life go through you.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we go, boom, this shouldn't be, or boom, I want to complete that, life can't go through you if you attach to it. It's reasonable to not like it. You don't have to like it. Get those emotions felt.
Yeah.
But if you over attach to a should, and that's the simplest way of saying, life can't move through you. It's really an alternative consciousness, Joseph. It's so simple and yet so complex. We don't go through life.
Yeah.
We're always here. Life goes through us. And if it goes through us, and we're upset for some reason, I guarantee you can deconstruct and find some resistance to the world's imperfection. And until that, you can, oh man, this sucks. And it goes through you. It doesn't stick anywhere to a should.
Yeah,
then
I have that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you do. I can feel you on the airwaves. When you're a force of nature. On the airwaves, I'll go like this, and Joseph just hit a brick wall. And buddy, I just want to send.
Yeah, what I'm working on is narrowing that embodiment gap so that I don't hit my head up against the wall, more times than is necessary for. It's like, okay, yes, this is not as I expected it would go, and also just surrender to that this is what I need, like just this one microcosm of, I've got over 100 podcasts of us and other stuff stored locally on these hard drives, and it's on a RAID. It's 4 drives such that 2 can go bad if it's the right 2, and they'll still be preserved. I also have a backup in the cloud, so this is just the local backup. So of those 4 drives, there were 2 new ones that were less than 2 years old, and those 2 failed in the same week a couple weeks ago.
Dude, no.
And now, fortunately, it was again, I have a real backup in the cloud,
right.
but it's
Right.
a lot of work and a lot of time to get that. Probably would have to send away and have them mail me a hard drive and all that. Mm-hmm. But there was a 50-50 chance that it would have been catastrophic and I would lose all of it. But fortunately, I lost the correct 2 drives and then to rebuild them. But then why did they die? Because the temperature was too high in the drive, and then the company couldn't tell me if the fans were working or not, and just everything that could possibly go wrong about that one thing did.
Yeah.
And instead of it taking like 3 hours to fix, it probably took me 10, and it's still not fixed. And so and then I go into like the will, and the mind is like, thinks about all these things I could be doing if I wasn't dealing with this shit. I want to be writing, and I want my house clean, I want the grass cut, I want to enjoy myself. I want to spend 10 hours dealing with something that shouldn't, in quotes, have happened anyway, with 2 drives failing in the same week that were less than 2 years old. They're warranted 5 years. What the fuck?
Yeah, exactly.
And this is what I need.
So to really translate where the rubber meets the road, as we all like to say with the Joseph's podcast here, is that it's not that you have to like it. Mm-hmm. It's don't get over attached, resentful. Otherwise, you're still resisting the world. It's this thing of life flowing through us, even though seems like we walk through rooms and we walk downtown, or we go in, we take our car into town. We're moving through life. we're not. We are always here, and life, when we get in that truck, it's just it makes life go through us a little faster when we're driving to town. So that switch alone has huge amounts of data to it.
And I noticed that sometimes I'm like, man, I'm getting so wrapped around the axle by these little things, because it's like little triggers seem irresolvable. It's like there's no processing the trigger like we used to. Like, that doesn't work. Like, what does this remind you of, and how did your father treat you, or what? Like, that doesn't work anymore. It's you have to feel your reaction.
Yes.
Which is somehow overblown, but not, because it's like an existential trigger, I think, not a situational one.
Exactly.
It's like
it looks situational.
It looks situational, no, but like the customer service people of the hard drive thing, it's like, no, that's the world talking to me. Yes. And it's, I'm feeling the incompetence and lack of care in the world, and I've just got to make peace with that. And then sometimes when I'm like, I notice like how much I'm not accepting it, I go, where's my sagehood awakening and all this? And I'll try to like find that, and I usually can't until I feel all the way through what the existential trigger is. And then everything is fine exactly as it is.
But it shows up when you do that. Exactly. That's Breeze in my experience exactly also. It's
because it's too willful to try to use it as a way to transcend. That's so crazy that I've lost the ability to do that. I used to be able to do that.
Well, thank God that you lost it.
I know, but geez, because my protector's not happy about that.
No, it's a strategy. Yeah. So we draw a really interesting unification. It's not about repressing how you feel about it. It's about learning that resisting it to an attachment, you're really attached to your resentment right now. It's the attachment. That's what makes it existential, not situational. See? So when the IRS sends us a bill for $5,000 that we already paid last quarter, and it's already
they love doing that.
And it's already accruing interest.
Right. Oh, and penalties, interest and penalties for what you've already paid. I had that happen once. Yeah.
And they are referring it to collection agencies.
I had that exact thing last year.
There's no solution. I was on the phone calling the local IRS office in Southern California, closest to us, and there's no phone number there. The phone number is to the central place in D.C. or Ogden.
You went through the IRS tree? Oh, man, that's the biggest phone tree in the world. That thing is crazy.
You can't get the local office on the phone. You can show up and knock on the door and demand to see a human being. But it took me 3 tries. Once I tried the callback thing. Well, we have agents working other people, and there'll be 3 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, get a callback. The callback, I'm working. I've got the phone on. It's not on do not disturb. The volume's up, and I'm working. And it just flashes on the screen for a second, and there's no ringing of the phone on my phone. And this happened 3 times. And so we finally gave up, and we just gave power of attorney to our accountant. They've got a special professional doorway in. Yeah. And it'll cost us a little, but not much. And we can't get through. The normal person can't get through. And he says exactly what you said, Joseph. They do this. Their computers don't talk to each other. It is the worst bureaucracy of the bureaucracy.
And they're so behind on their mail. I mean, it's still from COVID, but they were like 5 months behind on their mail. And it's probably better now. But yeah, I know exactly what you went through. It took me probably about 5 hours of hold time and going back and forth between the collection agency. And it was literally like being in a Kafka novel. I was like, oh, this is...
You can't make this shit up. Yeah. And so what you do is you finally get to the point where you don't have to like it. Here's the unification. You don't have to like it. But over-attachment to that goes into resentment or exasperation past a certain point.
Or not wanting to be alive, that kind of existential depression,
Exactly. So That's how we don't transcend our way out of these life fixes or non-fixes that we try to fix. We feel what we feel. You don't have to like it, but then remember that life goes through you, and it's all a process. And
Yeah, but that's what the sort of the I'm trying to not let my green color these words. We want to say brutal paradox. That's what the immensely opportunistic challenge is that all of the prior work makes things like these IRS hoops and bad customer service where they are obviously at fault and don't even apologize. It makes it all hurt so much more. Yeah. Right? So it's the situational emotional healing work turns the volume up way so we're hypersensitive to this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And then it's irresolvable, and the only thing is to let it go through you and let it light up any aspect of you that can't handle that's life.
Another beautifully said.
I get these little glimmers of the me that may survive or arise out of this. Every once in a while, like, wow, I see, and I'm starting to be able to work with people in better ways. So I'm seeing some of the fruits of this labor, but it's been all year. It's been challenges on challenges on challenges.
And it seems like it's gotten worse every month this year.
Yeah.
In general terms. But it does illuminate the one last we went this route rather than deconstructing. We can do that after our election one.
After the election special coming up next week.
Yes. But here's the fundamental, another fundamental existential assumption of identity. It's never been about overcoming.
Right.
It's about undergoing. Yeah. So whatever is bothering you, all of our strategies philosophically, mentally, even spiritually are distractions from that we've been trained to overcome these problems, overcome your emotions, overcome your bad thoughts, overcome them with 9,000 different ways to do that. We say, no, you have to undergo it emotively.
Yeah.
And when that, like you just said a few minutes ago, when that completes, then all of a sudden there's the non-dual to aid you to the steps that you processed 90% of it, or 80, and now you don't have to do the rest because boom, there's the non-dual comes in, pre-dual.
And that seems to be what unifies the hoods, because it's this sainthood piece as well. It's like happening in order to push the hoods together somehow to knit them together. So it's not the way I would have chosen for it to happen, but what do I know?
Amen to
and
that.
there's another piece of this is this seems to be the if this is the end game, if whatever that means of EBE or identity, then of course it would be something that we can't proactively do. We already did that. And now this is the part where it takes us for a ride the same way the last part on the approach to sagehood awakening, you have to lose the seeker and you find out what was the Ramana Maharshi, I think, was the one who said when you have your head caught in the tiger's mouth.
Yes.
That was the description of the last phase where it's like, or to use the metaphor you've used in the past, you're digging a tunnel and you don't realize that for every one of your shovels, Divinity is doing 2 shovels on the other end. And then when the water comes through, you realize that the good news is you don't have to work so hard at digging. The bad news is the whole thing's out of your control now. And you actually unconsciously were enjoying being in control very much while you were complaining about all the work of shoveling. You really wish you could go back to the shoveling thing because at least you knew what the hell was going on.
Oh, so well said, Mr. Man. Yeah. So well said.
Well, thanks for the meta.
Oh, you're so welcome. What a joyfulness this evolved. So again, we went off our planned script, and ain't that the way now? It is the way.
What's a script? What's a plan?
Exactly. So the byline to close is undergo, don't overcome. If you try to overcome, you're gonna make your life worse. What's the emotive transaction that the bullshit that's coming into your mouth is actually inviting you to taste? What's the root of it? Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Stace. So we're going to continue with this chart and going and zooming in, but we are going to take a I don't know, I was going to say a fun break, but who knows what it's going to be. I have for some reason this image of like, I romanticize the election coverage in the news where they've got the map and this just in. And so some part of me wants to do something like that. And I know we can't, but I don't know. I was moved to do it, and all I have is my intuition these days. So we're going to have Eric Grace join us again. He's been on this podcast at least once that I can remember. He's going to join us next time, and for a pre-election special where we're going to talk about healthy governance and the pain of voting, perhaps, which is something very much on my mind, and the meta to all of this. Altruism, bullshit altruism versus toxic greed, which is what the presidential election is a referendum on in many ways, and whatever else comes up. So tune in next time.
Okay.
Thanks, Stace. Thank you, listeners. Until next time, we wish you well on your journeys. Thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. To learn more about Stace Barron and Identity, please visit identity.org. To learn more about Joseph Shapiro, visit clearandopen.com. Until next time, we wish you well on your journey.